we forget that terrorist groups can be of any radical ideology. We're focused in, obviously, since 9/11 on Islamist terrorist groups. But, here in this country, we have religious ones, non-religious ones, single issue terrorist groups. Um, we've had in the past, nationalist terrorist groups.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you today, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Great day, great last couple of days, but we'll get into that another time. But just really happy, and looking forward to this show, man. This is gonna be a good one. Something we've touched on with other shows, Dan, but not fully 100% like we're going to tonight, right?
Absolutely. And, people out there, a lot of people watch movies, TV, and they think they know what the Central Intelligence Agency is in the United States of America. And even some people that have worked closely with it don't know half of what it is and what it does. Our guest tonight is one who does. Bob Dougherty, got to ask you by starting off, my kickoff question is going to be, what brought you to the point where you decided, or somebody else decided for you, that you were going to have a career in the Central Intelligence Agency?
Yeah, that's a good first question, right? First of all, thanks for having me on your show. I'm really honored and humbled to be here and enjoying talking with you guys already in the lead up. So, yeah, again, thank you. Um, well, I was getting out of college here in Southern California in the mid 1980s, so we'd just gone through that oil embargo and the hostage crisis. Jimmy Carter was president, and then right when I graduated, Ronald Reagan was becoming president, and so it was kind of a new awakening in America. And with the guys I went to school with that I had grown up with, we kind of all felt this deep sense of patriotism towards the country. And so a lot of us went into public service. I actually applied to the FBI was only taking accountants and lawyers at the time. I applied to DEA, I applied to CIA, a couple other federal agencies. I got rejected from the CIA the first time, and then I finally got in the second time, and I entered at a very young age. I was 24 years old. I had worked my way through high school and college like a lot of us. But yeah, I started young, but it was kind of that sense of I want to serve my country. I think, quite frankly, if I hadn't gone in the CIA, I probably would have joined the military. But what what a good choice now that I look back on it. The DEA also offered me a job around the same time period. Really glad I took it. No regrets. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And as both of you know, serving your community, serving your country, serving fellow Americans, it's a gift that keeps on giving. And I tell people who are considering a career in public service of any type, man, it's going to feed your soul. It really will. You're not going to get rich, but it's going to feed your soul.
That is probably the most true statement we're going to hear in a long time. You're not going to get rich. But here's what's interesting. The CIA was always an interesting organization to work with because your missions are completely different than everybody else. And you're not in a town, you're not in a city, you're in the world. I mean, everything the agency does bounces off something else that affects something else in the world. And that's why it's so interesting when we have the opportunity to have people like you on. And one of the most interesting things, this is what we're going to hit hard on, is the human intelligence side of the agency, which you are an expert in. Take us through what that means, what it means to develop a human source that is so necessary in this world. We'll get into the necessity of it later, but take us through the whole human intelligence side, Bobby.
Yeah, and you guys know as senior detectives, right? Developing sources, and again, we can call them sources, informants, assets, snitches, whatever, CIs, confident, CHSs, as the bureau says. We're all talking about the same thing: a human being that has agreed to cooperate with you to provide information that's of interest, and it's usually in a discreet or covert or clandestine manner, right? So it's all about personal relationships to me. Human intelligence is all about personal relationships, as is much of our society, right? And I think all of us, we forget that the essential part of spotting, assessing, developing, recruiting, and handling a human source is the personal relationship you have with them. whether they're a cartel scumbag or a hardcore Sunni Salafi jihadi terrorist, or some Russian high level official who hates communism, right? The personal relationship drives all of that. If you don't have that with your source, you probably don't have a good source. You're probably not going to recruit someone to be a source for you, and you're probably not going to be able to produce the intelligence that you need to run that. So I think when we do training and when we talk to groups of people, like I know both of you had, about what does it take to be an effective undercover investigator or a detective or a case officer or an FBI special agent running sources, you have to be able to interact with people, have empathy, have critical thinking, be able to assess them, right? And really assess them deeply for what makes them tick, what motivates them. If you can do those things, you probably have a pretty good chance of understanding someone. And look, not everyone can be a source for you. Not everyone wants to report information. You got to turn over a lot of rocks to get to the good source. But I often say this, and I've seen this in other print and everything too. You give me a well placed human source in any organization, a Mexican cartel, ISIS, the Russian intelligence service, I will destroy that organization. I will dismantle that organization with one really good, well placed human source. That's the tremendous value they have. And in this modern technological world, as you guys know, we seem to be getting away from that. Technology is great and it works, but man, just talking to people and getting out and talking to people, taking your watch off and drinking lots of cups of tea or coffee, as it were, that is the lost art. That art is lost for it's been lost for a long time, unfortunately.
So you get two main categories of intelligence in the intelligence community of America. I think they're just basically called SIGINT, signal intelligence, and human intelligence. It's either something that comes from technology or it's something that comes from directly from the person itself. Tom and I have worked snitches, we've worked CIs, we've done that work, we've done it successfully, and we recognize that depending upon the size of the prize is kind of the level of relationship you have to have with them, right? Because if you're just flipping a guy to give you a search warrant in the Bronx in the middle of the night where it's got 5 guns in the house or a pound of coke, you can kind of use that person if you've got something over their head. But a real long-term, deep investigation that goes on requires that relationship. So you just mentioned everybody's focus on signal intelligence. There's so much of it now with technology. Why is it so important that we need human intelligence? You just basically said some of it, but like in today's society where everybody seems to think everything is accessible through technology, why is the human piece still so important?
Yeah, I mean that's a great core question to what we do, right? And I would make a broader statement that human intelligence that has been around since the beginning of man, we can say the second oldest profession, really. Human intelligence is even more important in today's fractured and chaotic world than it ever has been, even with all the technological advances. And people say, well, why do you say that? And this goes to the core of your question. So let me use some examples. SIGINT, signals intelligence, whether it's tactical. We got, I train US Navy SEALs and they got gear in their backpack and they can intercept cell phone signals and we're tracking down where a cartel or a terrorist cell is. Great. Or NSA's got satellites in the sky that are doing the same thing internationally, strategically. And we're getting SIGINT off of cell phones, radios, all those electronic transmissions like you mentioned. That's great. And that's some really good stuff, right? But what that almost never gives you after having done this for 30 plus years, it never gives you what's in the hearts and the minds of the people that are driving evil against us, are doing bad things against us. It doesn't tell you what's in the mind of the cartel leader on how he's going to expand business inside the US. What are his strategic thoughts? What is Vladimir Putin thinking about Ukraine? What are the next steps? What is the, ISIS leader in this town going to do next? That's where human intelligence fills that critical role. It tells you the plans and intentions, and it tells you the hearts and minds of the people that are driving these organizations. Because at the heart of any violent organization or adversarial organization, it's comprised of human beings. So we need to know what those human beings are thinking and doing to be able to understand what we're facing better and be able to mitigate some of those consequences that are coming our way.
What a great question. What a great answer, because it sets up my question to you. It was just so factually correct in what is necessary in this world and how much is out there that can be tapped into. So my question to you is, okay, you walk in the office, you walk into your boss, there's a terrorist act maybe being planned somewhere. Bobby, we need a source. Take us through it. What are you
Okay.
doing? How you getting them? Like what I want to hear is how, okay, because I know even the limited time we talked, someone lays that on you, Bobby, your mind immediately is going into action. Where, when, who, how, and how I'm gonna do it. So just as much as you can, take us through that process.
Yeah. So you say, okay, this terrorist act. So you're going to name a group. Okay. Like, for example, I'll pick something that's a little obscure, but it's from my background, it's from Rick's background. Shining Path in Peru, which almost overtook the country and initiated a chimera like Pol Pot like scourge of Lima, of Peru. We almost lost Peru. But Rick and I were able to engineer an operation to take it out. So we got this terrorist group. Okay, what do we know about them? At first, I would gather whatever we knew about them. And now that's a lot easier than back in all our days, right? Because we can use the internet and these data tools. So I'm building a target package of what that group that we're targeting looks like. Then I'm building individual profiles or folders on the key people in that group. So here's where I got to do some critical thinking. I got to know about that group. I got to know their ideology, the radical ideology that drives them. I got to know their doctrine that dictates how they do things. I got to know their foundations and their origin story, right? And this is where most people never dive in as deep into that, because if I know all those things, then I can try to look at the group once I've built that information database on them. Say, now where are the cracks? Where's the guy I can target who may be a little pissed off of things that are happening? And then once I do that, like say I get 6 targets, then I'm going to try to figure out how can I put myself in front of them. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's someone else I know, a family members of theirs that has a lot of influence on them. Maybe I go and talk to the family member and recruit them to lead me to my ultimate source that I want to recruit. So from the 50,000 foot view, you're building a target package. You're identifying individual targets that may be of interest to you in terms of being a source, and then you're figuring out ways to get in front of that source or approach them. Either it's you or someone else. And then with the CIA, we had the added option of we didn't always have to be Americans. We didn't always have to be CIA or State Department officers. We could operate under some sort of other cover and come at them from an oblique angle. Maybe the guy's a businessman and we're also an American businessman and we want to do a deal with him. And that's how we're going to get next to him and start talking to him. So all these different ways that we could get next to someone. And then, as you guys know, once you're having a conversation with them, you start that relationship, you start the rapport, you start the empathy, you start assessing their motivations. You're using all those tools that we call tradecraft, right? And that interpersonal skills. And you're figuring out what makes this person tick. And every single human, as you guys know on this planet, has core motivations, the things that they care about deeply that drives them forward. If you can identify those, man, you have an incredible key, not to a negative manipulation of them, but a positive manipulation of them by saying, I can provide some of those things that will lead you to fulfill your core motivations. And in return, I need X from you. You get to that point, then you got a good chance of success. But it takes a lot of work, as you guys know. It's not sexy. It's not headline making. You gotta, it's boring a lot of the time, but absolutely that is the formula to develop and spot and recruit a human source and manage them, even against the most dangerous and high profile organizations out there.
Every shift starts the same way, with intent and purposeful preparation. Gear double and triple checked, making sure you're ready for the day. But once you step outside, nothing about the day is guaranteed. You face the unpredictable, the weight of decisions that matter, That's why Galls stands behind the uniform, to provide the reliability and support that helps you stay ready, supporting the hero behind the uniform. Galls is proud to serve those who serve.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Being a police detective in America and approaching people to be a source for you is either usually happens when the person's under arrest and they need a break, or they want help with something, work off a case, financial if it's the drug business. But it's pretty much you can approach them, and if they say no, you go home and you're on your way. CIA operations officers are positioned around the world without the benefit of American law enforcement support on your own. And once you approach somebody, you're exposed to a certain extent, aren't you? Now you've been compromised a little bit. That's dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, Dan. And so, and the other thing too is we rarely operated in teams, right? It was usually you're out alone. You're out alone using your tradecraft to make sure, you're safe. No one's following you digitally. No one's surveilling you. You're out there either meeting established sources that have already been recruited, getting intelligence from them, or you're trying to spot new sources that you can develop. So it's all a dance, right? You may start talking to someone you think might be a source from you, and it's kind of in the open. Maybe you're meeting them for lunch, and my cover overseas was a State Department officer assigned to the U.S. Embassy, right? So I had a cover as State Department, right? I could use that to navigate through that country's society, right? Through their layers of society. But then, say I'm spotting a guy and taking him out to lunch, and he's a mid-level official in that country's government, and he's got a position that gives him placement and access to information that we're interested in. At some point in that dance and walking him down the garden path, you take the big gulp, and you already know the answer by this time, and you say, "Oh, look, I really don't work for the State Department. I work for CIA, and I'd like to help you to help me out, and in exchange, I'm going to give you this." So, and then hopefully by that point, then you're meeting them clandestinely, right? It's no longer lunches or coffees or out in a park. You got a fully clandestine communications plan, and you're meeting them out of sight of everyone. But that's basically the process and the dance. And we're alone, we're usually unarmed. We're alone. Now, most of us have diplomatic status overseas, but in a lot of areas I worked in, if I was in a third country, I didn't. I was just an American citizen there, right? So that's why we put such an emphasis on our operational tradecraft, operational security, doing things the right way, critical thinking, because we didn't have any QRF or backup force to call. It was just us, right? I think a lot of these younger generations have lost some of that, right? And they've lost some of that because of the electronics that happen now. And we've made them dependent on that instead of, you remember when we were kids, right? You say goodbye to mom and dad. You go out on a summer day. You wouldn't see them till dinner time. They had no way to get a hold of you, nor did you of them. And they trusted you to survive on the streets wherever you were at. And that, we didn't think about it at the time when we were running around doing all that fun stuff. But that grew a sense of independence, self-reliance, introspection, and the ability to navigate in an environment and establish relationships with people and navigate those successfully, right? If you didn't, you got your ass kicked or you got in trouble. And this younger generations that are coming up behind us, whether they're in the police, the military, special forces, or even the CIA and FBI, I don't see that they have a lot of that.
Wow. I mean, Dan, you just used the word fascinating before, and it's still fascinating what's being said. We would get asked all the time, Bobby, how do you trust a source? How do you trust someone that is probably a bad guy most of the time? How do you trust them? So my question to you is, how long was your trust checklist before you put a source operational?
About as long as my wife's trust checklist is on me all the time, that she'll constantly remind me. She would have been an outstanding case officer, way better than me. I mean, you got to admit, women have that intuition, man, to smell bullshit. So she's really sharp on the critical thinking. No, I mean, we can make fun of the CIA, and rightly so, for a lot of weaknesses and failures and misgivings, but one of the things we do really well is what we call asset vetting and validation. So we are constantly doing that. And a case officer is expected at every single meeting with a source you're doing asset vetting and validation. You are, is he arriving on time? Well groomed. What's going on in his life? Are his motivations still the same? You better be assessing that. And then when we get the intelligence, and intelligence is just information used for a purpose. When we get the intelligence, hey, does that make sense with maybe some other sources we have like SIGINT or open source? Does it track with his previous reporting? And then we'll do what we call operational testing, which will test that trust, right? Like maybe on his phone, I'll load a data logger that shows me where he is GPS wise without his knowledge, right? And then I'll ask him, hey, for the last 2 weeks, tell me about your pattern of life. Where have you been? Do a thorough debrief on that and then compare that to our electronic data, right? Lots of little tricks like that we can do. But a good case officer, a good detective, a good investigator, anybody that's handling a source should be doing that all the time. Constant. And it's not that I think this guy's lying to me or bullshitting me. It's I'm going to test all the time. I'm going to vet and validate all the time. And as long as I do that and don't get comfortable, no matter how much I like or dislike this guy, then I'll probably be pretty well served by that. I've had lots of cases where, longtime sources, great information, and then the guy starts deciding he's not going to fly around the world to go to this country of interest for us to collect intelligence. He's got enough contacts, he can kind of do it on the phone or from the newspaper. And so all the money we were paying him to go do these things, he's just pocketing. And then I check the flight that he's supposed to be on to go there, and his name's not on the manifest, right? So you got to be doing those things all the time to make sure that these guys are being as upfront as they can with you. And we all know that a lot of the time they're going to be playing around the edges. By definition, that's what sources are. We went through this time period where we were talking, I remember in the CIA, we were talking about, you can't recruit people that might be human rights violators. Well, shit, we might as well just close up shop then and go home, right? This is exactly the type of people that we want because they can tell us information that's of interest to our national security, right? So luckily we got past that. But yeah, these are not the best people in the world. So you always got to be vetting and validating.
Great answer and very thorough. It's I can only imagine the level of complication in some of the work that you did. But while we're talking about some of the work that you did, to the extent that you can share other success stories that you've had that you're willing to tell for our audience, I'm sure if I was at home listening to this, I'd be like, tell me a story. Tell me something cool that you did,
Well, yeah, thank you for asking. So a couple cases that I was really proud of in my career, and I know you guys have similar stories, right? These are the ones you carry with you and you say, hey, no matter what, at the end of 30 years or whatever, 25 years, I did a couple things that may have made a difference somewhere. Rick Prado was involved in one of them, so he may have talked to you about the one down in Peru, where Shining Path was and again, it's funny because we forget that terrorist groups can be of any radical ideology. We're focused in, obviously, since 9/11 on Islamist terrorist groups, but here in this country, we have religious ones, non-religious ones, single issue terrorist groups. We've had in the past, nationalist terrorist groups. Shining Path was actually a communist terrorist group, right? It's a great story. The leader, Guzman, thought he was the fourth sword of Marxism, right? And so he kind of, it was kind of like a Pol Pot, Khmer Rouge in Cambodia thing. And they controlled most of the Peruvian countryside. They had killed enough police and military that, like the Islamic State in 2015, they actually controlled and governed large areas of Peru. So Rick and I get down there, we see what's going on, we devise a plan. We had a lot of help from other people down there and our office down there. And over a 2-3 year period, we were able to get enough sources in that group and then work with the Peruvian counterterrorism police and strengthen their capabilities, that in one night, based on some of the stuff that we were able to feed them, they took down Guzman and his entire leadership cadre in a safe house that they raided, and ended a 20-year insurgency that had cost about 77,000 lives and about $20 billion in economic damage, and almost caused that country to fall to communism. So that's one I'm really proud of. And Rick kind of taught me how to do that. Like, how do you battle a terrorist group. Here's the equation, right? And it almost always is, as you guys know, community engagement leads to good intelligence, leads to effective law enforcement action. And there's no other formula. Those are the three parts. Even you can translate that to special operations as well. Community engagement, getting out and talking to people in villages and tribes in Afghanistan and Iraq leads to good intelligence about what the bad guys are doing, leads to surgical, tactical operations to destroy what those bad guys are. The formula never varies. It's simple common sense. And yet we fail to understand that so many times. We fail to learn from history. So that was one of my really proud moments and cases and in my career.
And you should be proud of that. Wow, what an accomplishment.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, no kidding. Did you see a big difference with pre and then post 9/11?
Yeah, I know where this is going. So I know, yeah, all three of us served on joint terrorism task forces. So as you guys know, there were very few joint terrorism task forces or JTTFs for your listeners before 9/11. After 9/11, they kind of sprung up. JTTFs were in every FBI field office. They slowly grew to that, and they comprised of local law enforcement and a bunch of federal elements led by the FBI. CIA was in some of the major ones, New York City, LA, Miami, Chicago, I think. And I was the first guy that was in LA. So I was in the JTTF before 9/11 because we had one before 9/11, and then in several years after 9/11. So it was a really interesting time period. It's a great concept for your listeners, and it still exists today. What happens and what I saw and what is still prevalent today is because there's no institutional knowledge, okay? Because FBI special agents will rotate in and out every 2 to 3 years between squads. They will come in for 2 years and work in a JTTF or maybe 3, and then they're going to rotate and work gangs or work narcotics or white collar crime, right? The local law enforcement guys like you guys, the NYPD guys, LAPD guys, LA sheriff's guys, senior detectives that would come and be part of the JTTF, they would stay there for long periods of time, sometimes 10 years. And thus they gained a lot of knowledge of extremism in their city, of terrorism in their city. And they became the subject matter experts on the JTTFs about what was going on in that city. And then where we had CIA guys like me, we rotated in and out a lot. I got the benefit of a family thing that I got to stay in LA on that JTTF for a long time. And it absolutely helped me and helped transform my career because I became an expert in what was going on and really dove into terrorism, right? I think that applies today, that we have a young generation of FBI special agents, of law enforcement officers in this country, of CIA case officers, Secret Service, CBP, State Department diplomatic security, you name the whole thing. And they don't know how to work really effectively in that JTTF concept and become subject matter experts in these issues that they're facing. You can't just shallow stroke working against a Mexican cartel or working against ISIS or working against the Russian intelligence service that's operating in New York City. You got to know that target well to be able to be effective against them. And that's what I think we're lacking. That's what I saw lacking back then, and that's what I see lacking now.
When a death leaves you with more questions than answers, you need an independent voice. Forensic Pathology Services offer private autopsies, medical record reviews, and expert second opinions. Trusted by families and professionals nationwide because every death deserves the truth. Visit fpsllc.org or call today to request a free consultation.
Wow. Great analysis and assessment of the current state. And I think part of it, if you had to give an answer to it as to why, I think we touched on it already before. When you're raised with phones and cell phones, and you're raised walking down the street, texting people and tweeting people, etc., as opposed to having real, substantive one-on-one conversations, you don't necessarily have the people skills that are very, very needed in that type of work. So you've been all over the world. You spent a long, very successful career with the CIA. sometimes we like to ask people this question: that was there one moment that stands out as the real, true pucker moment? Like, I'm not sure I'm getting out of this one. Is there one of those that you have in your head?
Yeah, I mean, you guys probably experienced many more of those than I did. Look, our tradecraft is really good. So I've been in some, when people think about you're all alone at the end of a fishing line, man. Like I've been in some really bad areas in Mexico and South America and the Middle East, and I'm the only American there, like in the immediate vicinity. And I'm an undercover CIA operations officer, and ain't nobody around to help me if shit goes wrong, right? So, but as you guys know, you think about it, it helps temper your thinking, but then you move on very quickly. Otherwise, it'll paralyze you, right? And you use all the skill set that you have. And this is a good question, Dan, because I think you guys are going to agree 100%. You have to rely on your intuition. We maybe call that our gut instinct, or, I got a funny feeling, spidey sense, or whatever. Our intuition is actually our subconscious working. And Jim Clemente, who was an FBI profiler, and he actually was one of the founding members of their behavioral assessment unit, he taught me this. He said the subconscious mind works 10,000 times faster than the conscious mind. And the subconscious mind, which is sampling the environment all around you constantly, is feeding your intuition. And so I think a lot of us, I didn't really know that till the end of my career, but I had used it and didn't know what to label it, right? And you guys did the same thing. So the more we were in an environment, the more we practiced our craft, right? The better we became at it, because it kept feeding our intuition about how do I react? How do I keep myself safe in this situation? Let me read all the cues of the environment and the people around me. And that just became part of our persona, our everyday life. We didn't even think about it because it was operating at a subconscious level. And again, that's what I call intuition. I think there's a lot of us that don't know how to harness that or even label that. I don't think you can teach it. You just got to have it by doing things and getting out there and doing it, which is another explanation why these young law enforcement officers, again, state, local, and federal, keep getting jammed up in situations and sometimes getting hurt or killed because their intuition is not strong enough to let them know when something's not right. And so I'm a big believer in that. I've been in lots of situations where, I'm like, in Peru, we were armed and we were out meeting penetrations of terrorist groups all alone, right? No GRS, nobody with us, and at night, and there's car bombs going off and the power is out, and I see someone running towards the car where I'm parked or something, my hand's going to my model 1911 in my waistband. But luckily nothing ever happened and you got through. But to tell you the truth, it was kind of exciting at the time. That's what kind of like, this is what I joined the CIA for, right?
Yeah, that's I think we've all been there, like, especially other people asking us stories about how was this, and all of us going, yeah, it was cool. And other
Yeah,
people would
do it
faint
again if I could.
and not understand that. I used to, people will always ask us, where was the best place you worked? I said, narcotics was the most fun. And they're like, fun? I'm like, yeah, my definition of fun is completely different than your definition of fun. Completely different. But I want to go into today, Bobby, and what's going on around the world. I mean, we have China, we have Russia, we have Iran. What's going on in the world as far as the intelligence gathering and what the agency is probably doing with everything? I mean, a lot of times in the past, it's been, all right, one or two hot spots that we're dealing with. Now there's like, it's endless. How's the agency managing that?
I don't think well, quite frankly, at all. I think John Brennan, our former director, probably hurt us more than any director in the history of the agency. He, for whatever personal reasons and psychological reasons, he took away control of the director of operations, where guys like Rick and I worked undercover collecting the intelligence, and he gave it to support, and he established these mission centers, and he basically put non-operational people in charge of seasoned operational people like us. You guys know this because you're shaking. And it happens in a lot of organizations, right? And that was the death knell. I can tell you absolutely 100% certainty that our collection of priority intelligence on the human side from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea is way less than it was 10 years ago, is way less than it was 15 years ago. And that is really troubling and alarming. As Dan mentioned, the SIGINT part of it, great. Open source part, we're doing well. All the other technological stuff, the ways we're doing cyber stuff, we're kicking ass. But the human side of it, man, we're not doing well. It's not a good news story. It is not a good news story. And this is the most diverse threat I've ever seen. And people look at sometimes at old guys like us, right? And say, it's like, I got that in there, old guys. And they'll say, oh, for you guys, the sky's always falling. No, bullshit. You know what? I've been around long enough, pre 9/11, post 9/11. This is the most diverse threat environment we're in. China is surging. Russia is becoming aggressive. We've got AI to worry about, technological threats. We've got many more terrorist groups of different spectrum than we ever had before. We've got cartels on the border, right? No. This is when we need human and good intelligence and good detective work and good undercover work more than ever. And it's not happening.
Now, do you believe a leadership problem or a lack of experience in the field problem?
I think it's a leadership problem at all these organizations, FBI, CIA, military intelligence, NSA, DOJ, right? You guys can comment on NYPD and, other large departments. But I also think it's that generation of officers that are coming up behind us, no fault of their own, are not necessarily getting trained the way they should be, or are not getting out on the streets enough and practicing their craft. And they're relying on the easy button and they don't want to do it. And that's part of the answer as well.
Great answer. And wow, very revealing and alarming as an American.
It should be
Alarming.
very alarming to Americans.
Yeah.
I tell people, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. Not a lot of people think that. When I used to meet Americans overseas that were traveling or something, if I wasn't operational or doing something, hey, how are you? A fellow American enjoying it. Who are you? I'm like, oh, I work for you. I would say I work for you. And they would always be taken aback. Like, what do you mean? I go, I'm a third secretary in the U.S. Embassy here in this country that you're in. I work for you. Your taxpayer money pays my salary. And they'd be taken, oh, thank you very much. But we as public servants, we were all public servants. We forget that a lot. And the politicians in Washington have definitely forgotten that. Like, we support the American people. We don't work for the administration necessarily or our chain of command. We do. I get that. But in a larger sense, we work for the American people to keep them safe. And I think a lot of us has just frickin' forgot that fact, especially at the upper levels. I always remind people, as a federal officer, I don't know what your guys' oath at NYPD was. As a federal officer, it's to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, not the president in power, not Congress, right? And we forget that. And God damn it, we got to get back to that code of conduct, that honor and integrity that all of us used to have. And again, in the younger generations, I just don't see a lot of it. I don't see it at the levels that it used to be, that's for sure.
It's funny how people forget. History repeats itself because people forget. And it's coming up on the 25th anniversary of the day that Tom and I and many, many others responded to the World Trade Center in response to the largest terror attack on U.S. soil in our nation's history, one that we will certainly never forget, but so many people have. If you weren't there, if you didn't know somebody that got killed, if you were a young child in school, it didn't mean to you what it meant to us. So I am keenly aware when I watch trending going on around the world of the threat and where it's coming from and what it could mean, because I've seen what it can mean, and it was real to us. I think this generation, like you said, that's coming up now, the post 9/11, we haven't had that. We haven't had it since. And it's because of the work of people like you. But we're at risk all the time, aren't we?
We are at risk, and one of the to me, the one of the things I'm most passionate about in my training is talking about emerging threats and saying, look, man, we're always in reactive mode. We do great. When we talk about left of bang, right? We suck at the left of bang. After the bang happens, we're fantastic. We rebuild, Boston strong, New York strong. We heal. We go out and catch the MFers that did whatever they did, or we bring justice to them, right? We're fantastic as a country at that. We absolutely suck at preventing that from happening in the first place. And we've all done a good job at doing that, but we still are not as good as we should be. And so, to get there, you need to understand the threats that are out there. And there's a myriad of them now. And you talk about the Chinese, they are in our infrastructure, our water systems, our electrical systems, our power systems, our financial systems to a degree that we don't even know. And when people say, oh, yeah, but you know what? If they want to flip a couple switches, this country starts to shut down by and large. Yeah, we'll recover. We're not going to get destroyed, right? Cartel activity in our society is massive. I always talk about going to war against Al Qaeda is a hell of a lot different than going to war against a Mexican cartel. And we better be prepared for that difference because it'll be a lot more dicey and dangerous. There's a lot of counterintelligence that we're going to have to pay attention to because Al Qaeda was not embedded in our society by and large. There were cells, as you guys know from being on the JTTF. The cartel is. They're all around us. So we better take that in consideration if we're going to really go after them. And then, the AI, the generative AI, right? We talked about this at the beginning. I mean, I track that stuff and I talk to people and I really try to keep up on it. If you've got founding members that developed this technology who have made hundreds of millions of dollars off of it, saying, you guys, we need to slow down. That should make us worry. If you look at the Ukraine-Russia war and how unmanned assets, maritime, air, and ground, are dominating the battlefield now, we better pay attention. We just had this attempt against, it looks like against President Trump at this event, using drones. I've been predicting this for years. Of course it's going to happen. Cartels use drones all the time in Mexico. If you look at any of the numbers, and yet modern day police departments, our local, state, and federal authorities seem to be like, yeah, well, what can we do about it really? Are you kidding me? This is our job here, right? That's what frustrates me sometimes. But I think you're right, Dan. There's more threats out there than, and then, I even talk about synthetic biology, the ability to manufacture RNA is now down to a level that you can buy gear. I presented in my presentations, I show on eBay of a CRISPR, of a gene sequencing machine, and you can buy it on eBay for $4,000 or $5,000. You can outfit your garage and you can start messing around with RNA and DNA. That's scary shit, man. And we better start paying attention to some of that stuff. And I just don't think we are.
What an incredible message, man. And you're right. And we were goofing around, like before the show, we were talking about Skynet, and it being real and all that. But when you break it down and hear it the way you just explained it, it is scary because it's here. It's not
here.
The future anymore. It's not what if anymore. It's already here.
Hey, you guys, no fooling. Ukraine is using on the battlefield today a fully autonomous first-person view drone that doesn't have to be controlled. They launch it, no way to mess with its signal. It doesn't need a signal. Using AI software, it's searching for profiles of targets that are preloaded in its memory, and when it sees one, it's going to dive at it and take it out. How do you defend against 1,000 of those at a World Cup game, at the Olympics here in LA in 2028? The way you do it, as you two know the answer, is you penetrate those violent organizations that may be thinking about using that well ahead of time with human sources so you can stop it before it happens. And I just don't think we're thinking along those lines, nor are we preparing ahead of time for those sorts of things.
When it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
Wow. So, we could probably talk with you for 12 hours about, and I'm sure offline we will. And you're somebody we'd love to have back on because as things change in the world, your insights are so unique, and our audience, I mean, Tom and I, even having worked alongside, not like you, your insights are real and very revealing, so to speak. You've taken your skills and you've put them to another labor of love, so to speak, something that you're doing right now. You're involved in some fascinating stuff around the world. And if you could share with our audience to work with using the skills you used in dismantling organizations, what are you doing with that now?
Yeah. So, as you can tell, and you guys are passionate about what we do, right? Because we want to bring our knowledge to other people. So, I help I try to help with like the human intelligence part with like human and sex trafficking groups that are trying to dismantle human and sex trafficking organizations. It's a super underreported crime, as you guys know. It's in our country, which should be an embarrassment to every American that we have that going on in our country, right? Including slavery, right? And I gotta say, before I continue answering your question, Dan, thank you for the opportunity. You got to ask yourself a question. Let me run this past you. In 26 years as a CIA officer, we would get these priority intelligence requirements from CIA agents that were generated by all the consumers of intelligence in Washington, D.C. The president, National Security Council, military commands, local, FBI, law enforcement, and everything. And so these requirements and the military intelligence, we get the same, right? These requirements are basically, here's what the policymakers want to know about. Chinese nuclear intentions, Russians' plans in Ukraine, right? Down to what's Al Qaeda going to do next. Thousands and thousands of requirements I got in 26 years to collect intelligence on. Not one ever was on, hey, collect on human and sex trafficking organizations. Why is that? I asked my question at the end of my career when that topic, why would that be? And the only answer, as we know from Sherlock Holmes, is when you have eliminated all other answers, it's got to be the one that's staring you in the face. Could it be, and again, least conspiracy-minded guy ever, hope your audience can tell that, could it be that there's so many high-level people involved that they don't want the CIA and the FBI collecting on stuff like that? And I thought that before the Epstein thing came out. And I think the Epstein case kind of proves that point and may just be the tip of the iceberg. And that's freaking disgusting to have that in our country. So I'm trying to do that type of work and help those types of organizations out. I also do private training. I try to train as much law enforcement like you guys go out and do that as I can. I work on the classified side with our special operations forces elements, giving them human training, like trying to benefit from guys like ours knowledge, right? And then I'm doing a really cool thing right now. I call it the Dark Meridian Executive Experience, where I'm packaging a scenario like we do with the military, where you as an executive businessman come into, like San Diego, and you're immersed in another country, right? And you're going to go out as if you're a CIA case officer. You're going to meet sources. You're going to meet role players who are playing sources. You're going to collect intelligence. You're going to come back to the embassy, which is the hotel. You're going to build that into a picture. And then you're going to go do a dead drop. And then you're going to go surveil a target. And it's all leading to like a package that you're going to do. And then on the second day, you actually go and tactically hit a target that you've identified through your intelligence, which in San Diego is this unique facility developed by this movie special effects guy, where you can go in like a Middle Eastern village and we're firing sims or blanks and you got real bad guys shooting back at you. So that's kind of a cool thing. That's more of a pleasure thing, but we're trying to infuse it with the principles that we all know, which is good human intelligence, good operational tradecraft. Here's some lessons that you, your private corporate leaders, CEOs, and presidents can take into your industry, into your business, and use to make yourself more successful.
Is that all? No.
Yeah, I'm having a good time with you guys
we
too.
were getting
You guys
too
are having a good
serious there.
time doing this, man. I can tell.
Man, there's like Dan said, this could go on for days. I don't even think hours. This could go on for days. But Bobby, first of all, how do people get in touch with you? How do they find you? How do they get your wisdom and what you have to offer into their world?
Yeah, look, I'm like you guys, very humble. If I can help anybody out, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. It's the only social media I'm on under my name, Bob Dougherty. My website is tartarusintel.com. So yeah, just go on there. It's got my email address. Any of your listeners want to get a hold of me for something specific, Dan and Tom have my email address, but tartarusintel.com is my website. It has all that stuff. If I can ever help anybody out, and I mean that, kind of let me in with this. And I think you guys, maybe at the end of your careers like me, kind of came into this. I'm like, I kind of came back to this feeling like we got something really special being Americans. And I started doing the research on it. And I think reading is a very important part of maintaining your expertise on what's going on too, as well. These guys did this study and it was called 7 Tipping Points in world history. And basically what they did is they looked at every single country and every single government that's ever existed since the dawn of man. And they looked at the population and they came up with this figure that since modern man evolved, there's been about 110 billion people alive on this planet. Now, this was a couple of years ago, so let's say it's 125 billion. And then they rated all the countries and governments and monarchies and types of system that there were that ruled all those people on like freedom, equality, rule of law, effective law enforcement, property rights, individual rights. And they said of all the people that have ever lived on this planet, only 4.5% have ever lived under what we would consider freedom. And it made me think, God damn, you know how rare it is for us to be Americans and born in this country? How lucky and blessed we are? We're 5% of anybody that's ever lived gets to live in the system. However flawed it is, and it is flawed, is still the best in the world. And I make that point that guys like us were on that mythical wall. And sometimes we didn't know what we were protecting, but that's what we were protecting. The American dream, the American idea, American exceptionalism, the white city on the hill. And I know it's got cracks in its structure and it's, we need to fix it up and repair it, but that's what it is. And I don't think any of us should ever forget that. And those of you listening that weren't part of our world, what you're doing is you're driving the American dream. You're making us want to be on that wall to protect what you're doing because it is a special thing. And that's kind of my final message of driving forward and continuing to do what we all do.
Very, very well said. Very well said. Could not agree with you more. And thank you for saying that. That is something that every American, especially at this time of year, this is our 250th anniversary of declaring our freedom from Great Britain at a time when we, as a small little bunch of colonies, decided we escaped tyranny and came to this new place, and we're not going to live with it here. And may we always have that spirit as Americans where we're willing to challenge our own governing bodies to keep them in line. And thank the Lord, we have the Constitution and we have to keep it. Bob, you're an amazing, amazing person. Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight and telling us about your life and your career and a lot of stuff. I've learned a lot of stuff tonight just listening to you. And it's been fascinating. I can't wait till we talk again next. I know we're going to stay in touch, but I know our audience is going to love this show. You have really, really opened up some eyes, especially Tom and I, about some of the stuff that's out there and the threat against our country. Um, so, but we are blessed to have people like you doing the work that you did. So thank you for your career as well, protecting our country.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'll come back anytime. And thank you guys, because you guys were in there doing the same thing. So that's why I was kind of happy to come on this show and connect with you guys.
Outstanding. Just another example of a little idea we had, Dan, and getting great people on our show to tell their stories, which was the whole point of this podcast. That there's so many people out there that don't know the people who are out there in God knows where in this world, in the most dangerous situations, in the most dangerous countries, trying to keep us safe, that are just under the radar that no one knows about. And one of them is right here with us tonight. And Bobby, it was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for everything you've done, continue to do. It's a pleasure, my friend. And this is the time of our show and a perfect time, I think, to always say a prayer for our law enforcement officers, our federal agents, our military, who are out there doing a thankless job around the world, keeping us safe. So on the 4th of July, we can have a barbecue, we can have parades, and we can go shopping because of the work that's done by our law enforcement officers, our federal agents, our military, nurses, doctors, everyone on the front line. Just please keep them in your prayers, because they're the reason we can do what we do. And say thank you to them when you see them in the store. Dan's famous line, get up off your first class seat, move to the back, and let someone in uniform sit in first class for a change. Great line that he has, and we use it here all the time. So please keep them all in your prayers, and their families as well, because their families serve just as much as the individual does. Continue to follow us on our YouTube channel at Gold Shields, at thegoldshieldshow.com is our website. Please check us out. Continue to follow us. Continue to subscribe, because you're the ones who keep this running, and we do it for you. We have great guests like Bob on for all of you guys. So for my great partner, Dan Murphy, for Bob Dougherty, an amazing guest, Tom Smith here. Everyone out there, please stay safe. We'll see everybody soon.